There is a big question looming in the air that massively impacts the future of the US and world economies, and especially us here in crypto. And that question is, will Jerome Powell finally cut rates? Job numbers are way lower than what had been reported and continue to get revised down. Other numbers the Fed looks at are down as well, meaning that the US economy is much worse than what was thought. And this most often leads to the Federal Reserve dropping interest rates aggressively and also beginning quantitative easing, which puts a lot of money or liquidity into the markets. Now, if we see that, that brings massive money flows into riskier assets because bond prices come down, people stop holding bonds, and they're looking for some kind of riskier assets to get their returns. We'll take a look at some of the things that might give us an indication of if things are going to go that way. And we'll look at the crypto market itself, Bitcoin, ETH, what's going on there, and some altcoin picks. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, if you, like me, came into crypto because you realize there is potential here for life-changing gains, but you also realize that it takes a greater 4 to 8 year period, because that'll give you access to 2 crypto cycles. And if you're looking for those discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable, savage investor in crypto, kind of like a Navy SEAL of crypto investing, well, you're in exactly the right place and with the right family. Now, I was once new to the crypto space 8 years ago, and there was so much I learned along the way, and I enjoy sharing it with you. But straight up, the facts are not good in your favor, in that 95% of people don't achieve massive returns in crypto. But what I share with you is what are the 5% doing that do have those massive returns? And it's hard to do what those 5% are doing, because remember, that's even within the crypto space. And so if you're doing what everybody is doing in crypto, it's probably going to end up like most people get in crypto, which is not farther ahead. Now, do know I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul invests in many different markets, and none of this to be taken as financial advice. So make it rain on that like button, strap in for the show, and help me welcome Paul to the channel. Paul, thank you for joining us.
No, pleasure as always.
Wow. So, I mean, you've been kind of the mind that, like, well, it doesn't really matter so much what the Fed does. I think a big aspect of the 4-year crypto cycle that really fuels it is a big part of it is the Bitcoin halving and the supply shock that occurs after that Bitcoin halving. But the second part is it usually coincides with the US elections. And usually with the US elections, there are massive interest rate cuts and quantitative easing, at least the past 3 cycles. And so that's bolstered up this bull run as a lot of money and assets came into crypto. And we've had the Bitcoin halving, and it has driven up Bitcoin's price, but we haven't seen massive liquidity yet coming into the crypto market, pushing it to this really big explosion. But I suspect at least the Fed is going to start lowering interest rates, and hopefully they're switching from quantitative tightening to quantitative easing. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So just winding back from what you said there, usually in the last year of the presidential cycle, they will look to cut rates to boost the economy because the incumbent is trying to stay in. Usually in the first year of the incumbent, they will make hard decisions because they know they've got a 4-year mandate. So that's usually how that works. What I was saying about it was that Trump was most likely to get in, and we were still in a bull market, and he would supercharge it. There was some anticipation of that, but perhaps not as much as people realized. The markets did take off, but it depends what you're looking at, because of course crypto took off, then corrected, then everyone said that was it, and then it took off again and continued the bull market. So that's kind of past history. With regard to interest rate cuts, I've been fairly consistent in saying that I thought there'd be a cut around September, and that the data would probably, I even said last week, we'll probably see either weaker job market or a weaker CPI or something like that that will allow them to cut rates. And even when we had stronger numbers, the market was still looking for a rate cut. And from what I was saying, it's not that the Fed doesn't matter. It's just that the Fed leads what the market is doing. So that they're not necessarily controlling the market. They are following the conditions, almost lagging those conditions. And if you look ahead at the markets, you see the conditions as sort of presented by the bond prices, which I always do each week, the short-term money. And as I was saying, it was looking very much like from weeks ago that short-term money was dropping, the rate of short-term money was dropping very fast, which indicated a rate cut. And actually we're looking at a potential 50 basis point cut. When I say potential, I don't mean we don't really think there's a good chance of a 50 basis point cut, but it's moved from 0 to about 10%. So it's a non-zero possibility. Now, why could that be? I mean, we're seeing an escalation in aggression of Russia, this situation in Poland where the drones were shot down, which is really not very good at all, which isn't surprising why underneath we've seen a lot of increases in the price of precious metals. But again, precious metals as a risk on trade is something I'm almost a stuck record about. It's been one of the bigger trades that have moved correctly to the upside. And so within that whole remit of risk on, you've got equity markets at all-time highs, you've got commodity markets either at or approaching all-time highs, you've got bond yields at lows, and you've got a president who wants to push this thing to the max. So all of those things put together suggests that we will see far more risk on trades. Now, Bitcoin's had its big move, but we haven't seen the altcoin cycle accelerate. But there have been some signs of certain altcoins breaking out, and that's becoming more and more evident. And I think the pressure will increase in those areas. And when I spin through the charts, I'll give you an example in another market with precious metals, how something that's underperformed can suddenly snap into outperforming, mainly because of people look for, in a bull market, things that are undervalued, and more money just flows around looking for inverted commas bargains, which I'm sure is something that you can appreciate. But also that there's something called, you can create what's called a synthetic spread. Like, you can effectively create any market you want by creating a kind of basket of different products. And I'll explain what that means. So what you could do is you could create a market that's the price of silver against the price of gold, or the price of ETH against the price of Bitcoin. So you could put those two together and trade what's called a spread. There's no actual market in that, but there is a spread between the two. So you can trade between two markets, and you can be long one and short the other, depending on what's outperforming and underperforming. So there are lots of trades that happen like that. And when one of them starts to suddenly outperform, having underperformed, there's this requirement for whoever's short the one that was weaker having to flip their positions very quickly, and it causes this sharp move in the opposite direction. So there's kind of the headline's always been that we're in a macro bull market, and that is what's going to drive everything, and that's still continuing to be the case. So whilst the conditions underneath are positive, even if the Fed were to be looking to raise interest rates, that underlying macro scene is still looking positive. The market's unflustered. Now, nothing is ever 100%. We can make mistakes and things can change, but so far that's been the main headline of the way the market's trading out into year end, or should move into year end. So from last week, we were coming out of the August lull and volumes are a bit lower. volumes are starting to pick up now, and we just got to see where the money's going to flow.
Agreed. I'm excited to see where the money's going to flow. It looks like finally, I think the Fed is going to start going that direction, and I know what that leads to. I'm excited for that to play out. Now, I'm going to share charts here. What charts are you looking at? What are you watching?
Yeah, I'd say on the Fed, it's pretty much guaranteed they're going to cut rates by 25 basis points. I'd be very, very surprised if they don't. And that's not in very long. And we've got CPI coming out tomorrow, and I think that will be the number that will push this into a new upward phase, a new kind of upward trend. Having consolidated for a bit, it's taken a while to break through this 45,000 level, and it's just sat there, which is unusual. But if the market wanted to come off, it would have come off quickly, because most people want to short the market. They don't want to go long. So I think this will be the trigger point for anyone who's thinking the Fed might cut. I think it will be, they will definitely cut, and the risk on markets maybe then in the final phase, and final, I just mean short-term final phase, before we get like a correction that shakes out the Johnny-come-latelys into that trade. And then after a consolidation period, it continues into year end. But overall, this is still an upward trend, pure chart reading, which is what I do. That's an upward trend. This is a range. The transportation, it's going sideways. NASDAQ, that looks ready to break into a new high. S&P already in a new high. Russell 2000, that's heading towards this massive resistance point. That's really key. Short, Russell 2000, just to remind you, is smaller cap US stocks, and those are the ones that get hit the hardest because they have to pay the highest rates of interest compared to bigger companies that can borrow money much cheaper. So that's going to break a very key level soon. So it still looks like we're in this bull market, which is not really a surprise. And so if we look to the precious metals market, which we've got a question from Chris about that, and basically the trend is still up. We came out of this triangular constriction in gold. You might say it's because of the geopolitical tensions. It could well be. It could also be because interest rates are going down. It could also be a catch-up play. You've got Bitcoin going from 14,000 to over 100,000. People thinking, well, why not put the same amount of money into precious metals? Who knows why they're doing it? I mean, in the end, that's, for me, conjecture. What's really important is the price and the direction it's going, and it's going up. So for me, the trend is still higher. And I was talking to someone who's a very keen private investor, but obviously not very confident, and she was saying, when gold was around these levels, who can buy gold at such high levels when it was at $2,200? And that's the thing about trends. They continue for much longer than people think. Silver's just getting going, and it's heading back towards this $50 level. Palladium. Now, this is the example of what I was saying, that you might get these synthetic spreads where if you were buying gold and selling palladium, you would have probably made good trades, good money on the spreads, because palladium's really underperformed. It's performed pretty badly compared to gold. But then it even got a correction here, fairly hard correction. But today it's up 6% against everything else just up, minor. So that's telling me maybe this is getting ready for a bigger move. Now, it did that once and then it failed. But I'm only saying this because it's similar to potentially what could be happening with some of the altcoins. There are some interesting short-term charts that suggest that there might be some breakouts, and that's a really good sign. So just to answer Chris's question, which is, does gold look like a blow off top? Well, one of the things about a blow off top is it should appear at least on a weekly chart. And until the weekly chart has finished, there's no sign of, closed is what I mean, not finished. There is no sign of a blow off top. Now, this was a blow off top or spike top, and the market went into a corrective phase, a triangular constriction, a very clear one. In fact, there were so many people looking at this consolidation that I thought maybe it was time to go in the opposite direction and call it down. And there was a couple of times when we discussed that actually, and I was saying, it should have gone up, it didn't go up, it's gone sideways. But then all of that noise kind of faded away from people being, uber bullish and looking for a breakout. And then of course that's when it did it. But you can see how the range was getting tighter and tighter, and then it broke through this really nice resistance point, and it's been trending up. And yeah, maybe it does need a correction, but at the moment technically I can't call for that because there is no sign of a reversal. So that trend is still up, and until it appears on a weekly chart, you won't have a blow off top. So, and I'd also expect with a blow off top, the move to be much bigger than this. Even this wasn't really enough. It was enough for a correction, but not enough for a major trend ending signal. And that's for us to see in the future at some point. But when it comes to the bond markets, this is the chart I've been talking about, the 3-month money. It broke down in July. So that's as long as a couple of times it broke down, it went back up again. But that's the amount of time that we've been saying this is a signal that rates are going down. It's been fairly consistent in its direction. It's just a question of whether we're going to get a 25 basis point cut, or whether the data is going to be so weak that maybe Jerome Powell is going to be shown to have been wrong, and President Trump is going to have been shown to have been right, that rates, inverted commas, need to be cut. According to 6-month money, interest rates should be 3.75%, which is a 50 basis point, which would be a 50 basis point cut from where it is now. So that's interesting. 2-year money is dropping, and a lot of people in the city have been talking about how 10-year money is very upset, will be very upset about interest rates being cut because it's going to cause inflation. Now, even the long bond, not the long bond, the 10-year is actually holding in at lower levels. It's not trading up over 5% or anywhere up here on the chart. It's coming back down to 4%. When Trump did his tariffs and announced them, this was what shook him more than anything else. The fact that long-term yields or 10-year yields, of course, he's a real estate guy, isn't he? So he doesn't want yields to be going up because he can't borrow money, neither can other people to buy property. And that's maybe what convinced him to make some changes. But again, all of this is conjecture. We can just see the sentiment in the market and what actually happens in the market. So yields coming back down to 4% in 10-year money is a very important indication of how they might have room to cut rates, potentially 50 basis points. And if they do that, then no wonder the stock market is going up, and no wonder it could really accelerate as we move into year end. So, is the altcoin market going to just sit around while that's happening? Maybe. I mean, anything's possible, but it seems very unlikely. It seems more likely that things are going to start to get really hot, heated up. And the dollar is it's not broken its low, but it's bounced, and it's come off that bounce aggressively. Remember, we were talking about 100 and then it coming down again. So it's a bit of no man's land here. Is it going to go up, going to go down? Not sure, but the overall pressure is still lower. I mean, in the short term, it's difficult to call. Longer term, it seems fairly clear that this is headed lower in the same way as gold's headed higher. So, commodity currencies breaking out. We've got the Aussie dollar, which I follow very closely. That's just broken into a new high, going back to November 24, which it should do, given that the Australian, Australia's got a lot of resources and precious metals, etc., base metals, and this just adds to the picture of more risk on. So, overall, it's looking very positive. And I'm not just saying that because I want to be positive. I'm saying that because this is what it's looking like. So, when things change, we'll discuss the other side of that. But the only other thing I would say is that not that perhaps people will care that much about the UK on its own, but the UK seems to be having some political problems right now. And I don't know whether they're going to translate into economic problems. Maybe they will. but people were getting again worried about UK 10-year yields heading closer to this 4.9%, this super high level from January this year. And they were getting very nervous because we've got a budget coming up. But it seems to be behaving itself. So, maybe this is a general theme across all of, long-term yields. They tend to move in lockstep pretty much. There's not very much differences between them because global economies are so synchronized these days. So again, if there is a problem, probably UK will have a greater problem than other countries. What happens then is that the currency weakens, and when the currency weakens, people want to spend money in that country because things are cheaper, assets are cheaper, and they end up buying, and that kind of reverses the whole process. But overall, the headline, as I say, is the macro position is looking bullish, and I wouldn't be surprised to see CPI weaker tomorrow and the market to surge on that news.
We are live. So if you have comments or questions, go ahead and bring them in. Super chat in from, I don't know how to say this.
Ecan1. All
right. Okay, we'll take a look at that. That is a real estate project. Well, I'm curious to see how even the next couple of weeks shake out. Now, historically, September isn't a really big month for crypto. So a lot of people have asked me, like, what do I think is going to happen this September? And the truth is, I don't know. I do think later this year, we're leading into, I think, some really amazing price action in the altcoins. Does that start this month? I'm curious to find out myself. I don't have an opinion on which way it's going to play out because there's so many variables. I don't know. I do think that interest rates are going to come down. And if that kicks off a lot of market or money coming into the crypto market, then maybe. Otherwise, maybe not till October or even November. So let's take a look at some of the crypto coins. I appreciate your rundown on what's going on across the world and these different markets. And that's interesting that even precious metals, that things, when something is undervalued and other things have taken off, how sometimes the money then catches up in the one. I appreciate you showing that example. Bill Gardner with the super chat. Paul is a man. Thank you for the time. Thanks, Bill. All right. Yeah. Show us what's on your mind.
Yeah. Okay. So with regard to Bitcoin, we've seen this kind of double top formation play out, a little bit of a stunted correction because the market's still in an upward trend. It's now pushing back up again. Consolidation there for me is absolutely fine if it stays between 1300 to 120. That's good enough. I don't think it needs to go up much more at this point, but it may well do. My main focus now is on the altcoins and the signs that they're showing. And ETH, I still really like ETH here. I mean, it's had this huge rally, and it does need to consolidate. Things just need to consolidate when they've moved this fast. So, especially when it's stopping right at the previous high, but it's staying close to it, which technically is a good sign. And that means we should get another run at the breakout. So if I change this to a weekly chart, it gets rid of some of the detail, but it gives us a broader flavor of what's happening. It's, big levels, 5,000, and also this prior high. It's going to react there, of course, which it has. So it could take a little longer to break out, but I think the overall, probability is that this has got much more to go. So, what was it? Solana, I think I mentioned last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, I was saying watch that for a breakout. That's looking bullish as well. And there's other things that are looking good. So I think this is positive. I think there's a positive sign there that things are starting to react. The fact that actually there's not much in the chat and there's not much not many people who are talking about crypto right now who possibly, had enough and have said, oh, I'll wait or whatever, or looking at other things, is a good sign, because it means that that they're going to miss out on the next phase. And that's exactly what you want. Fear and greed is very neutral, considering how elevated the markets, inverted commas, elevated the markets are. That's a good sign as well. But as I say, Bitcoin, I don't mind whether it goes up or down at this point. Well, I do mind if it goes down, but I think it will just consolidate here. But this dominance chart, which was when it had this sharp move down, which we indicated technically was important, and then we were looking for this move below 60%, which it's done aggressively. This little consolidation here, I can tell you, looks like it's going to have another lurch lower. And this is all pointing to a very big move this week. And if that happens, Bitcoin could quite easily jump with everything else. But as I say, Bitcoin, I'm less concerned about. I use the word concerned. That's the wrong word. I'm more interested in the pickup in altcoins now and how they're going to respond, because I think Bitcoin's had a fairly decent run and it has led the way, and it probably does still have more upside. But synchronization in a bull market is important, and I wouldn't want to see underperformance in this next phase in altcoins. If things don't start moving in the next sort of month or two, then I'll be really scratching my head as to what is going to happen. It would be unlikely, but to be fair, there's been some fairly decent moves in certain places already, so there's still time. But I think sentiment wise, it's so interesting that it seems like there's less people out there who are kind of aggressively bullish. There's far more caution, which is a good sign.
Isn't it funny? I remember that saying you shared with me, that Wall Street climbs the wall of worry. And it really is talking about how markets and prices on volatile assets such as stocks often climb a wall of worry. Aren't we seeing that in crypto right now? The fear and greed index, where it is. And I think there's reasons to be massively bullish, but it's not surprising that it's actually more towards the fear side. And this trading the general market of buying things when they're low and selling them when they're high, it only works because most people do crypto wrong. Most people do a lot of assets wrong, and they get really worried when prices get absolutely destroyed and punished, and they liquidate at those points, or they sell, and then they buy after things have gone massively up, and that's what makes it so volatile. That's also what makes it so juicy for those that are counter trading that. And so for the way I approach it, it does take a lot of patience. It is hard to buy during the bear market, and you're buying cheap, and sometimes often it goes cheaper on you. And then you're just holding and waiting, and you're specifically trying to look for companies that will hopefully survive the bear market so that there's something to harvest when the bull market does come around. And then you sell when everybody's loading in. And that strategy's worked really well for me. In fact, everyone that I know that's made massive wealth in crypto, that's just what they've done. All right, let's take a look at, we looked at Bitcoin and ETH. Let's take a look at WLD, WorldCoin.
Yeah, so WLD, I'm going to just have a look at another chart and see if there's a bit more data. No.
Really only goes back to 2023. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. I think I'll use that one because I drew a trend line on it. Yeah, look, if you'd asked me here, I would have said neutral, and it was a wait, see, because the trend was down. It was below all the trend lines. But look what happened in a very short space of time. For me to wait this long before deciding to change my view is not what I would do. This is why I say sometimes the market is moving really fast, or can move really fast. and you have to look at those signs of an impulse move or a change in market dynamics. And it's fairly clear that we got maybe a couple of bars you'd let go, but this third one and then this fourth one is like, no, something big's happening here. It's broken the downward trend line and it's traded all the way up. I mean, it's a massive move. What can I say? In the process, it has negated the downward trend. It has created a base, and that base trigger is around 165. So I would have looked for it to stop around 165 simply because it was the previous resistance. It went straight through that. It didn't, like a knife through butter, it didn't stop there at all. Now it may come back, or I would have thought it would come back, just because it's got a bit of supply here. There's some resistance. The next big level will be at 250 psychological, and we can see along the chart there. Sorry, let's just reset that. Around 250, there's some resistance as well as it being psychological. Oh yeah, it's doing that because of that big spike there. Okay, that was strange, the way it was bouncing. So so we might see it correct at those points if it gets a bit higher. But the main question is, has the trend changed, and what does that mean further out? Well, we can draw this trend line in because it means the highs are getting, or the lows are getting higher. That's a new trend. But this is a very strong trend rate, as you can see. So we need it to come back to draw another trend line in, to have a more kind of in between type of trend, because this is not going to be sustained. Great if it is, and you're in it, fantastic. But in the short term, in the long term, it can't keep going up like that. I mean, it may do towards the end of, the end of the whole of the bull market, but not yet, I wouldn't have thought. So a pullback towards this sort of area, or this sort of trend rate would be more reasonable. But we can't draw that line in until it's actually made a new higher low. So for me, it's now changed its dynamics. It's one of the interesting things about altcoins at the moment, that there's going to be more of this happening and hopefully extending. So I would say it's a buy longer term, but I think in the short term, it probably does need to cool off a little bit. I would like to know a bit more about it, and perhaps if there was an announcement or something, because running into those announcements, you've got to be very careful that you're not buying into short-term euphoria as everyone else is, exiting into your position. But for the longer term, it does look positive, given that the technicals have changed. So for me, pullback levels at 165, really, this is only now negated on a break of this level or this line, which is going up in time, but very slowly. So it could actually correct a very long way before you get an exit signal. And that's the problem with buying in something that's already moved this much. We could use the 166 as a stop point, but I think it's more reasonable to say below 140. So between 160 and 140 should be really good support. And that will tie into this downward trend line as well. Sometimes that can act as support on the way up. So a reasonable stop for me would be 137, something like that, on a trade. So whether the risk reward works is kind of up to whomever's looking at that. I'm not saying that anyone else should do it. That's how I would do it. That's how I would look at it. I would compare it to other things and see whether I can get whether the chart looks better, or whether I can get the position on with a closer stop to make it work like that. So in comparison, but on its own, if we're just looking at this, and for me, I would say it's a buy, but just be more cautious of a pullback.
Yeah, WorldCoin, a little bit on the fundamentals of WorldCoin. Their market cap is 3.75 billion. So they're strongly in the larger market cap projects with, look at this, a fully diluted value of 18.5 billion. It's only a fraction of their tokens are in circulation, something to be aware of. It is on a lot of the bigger exchanges: Binance, Coinbase, Uniswap, Bybit, even MEXC. So it's out there and tradable. Now, for those of you who remember what WorldCoin is, there was a lot of, this was launched during the bear market. And there was a lot of talk about it because they were sending out these scanners where you could scan in and essentially get your biometric scanned in, so that there could be an identity created for you that's like non-hackable. And that brings some concerns too, right? Is like, well, you know, can governments be trusted with that kind of data where, like, you know, okay, it's biometrically secure, but if we do things according to the way you want, you know, is the government going to coerce you to take control of our accounts at some point? So I don't know how that will shake out. There's definitely some concerns there. Governments don't always act appropriately, but the bear market tends to punish projects. You know, even when they come in, they have a lot of hype, just as token investing and other things happen. And it came all the way down to 65 cents here at the low. It's now 3x up off those lows that it hit just in April. And this big pump, we don't fully know what it's from. But before we look a little bit deeper, I want to go more into the token investing. So it looks like it's steadily unlocked every month at a pretty high clip, and has been for a while. And so what are we at? We're still at maybe 40% of the 10 billion out there. Let's see, circulating supply. It says only 20% is in circulation, even though it's showing that more of that is unlocked. I wanted to read this comment here. WLD has been making headlines after an explosive move that saw the token rise over 60% in a single day. The surge was largely fueled by continuous accumulation from a major Korean investor. I have no idea how to say that name, whose activity has sparked fresh interest across the market. The momentum didn't stop there. Long positions in WLD increased significantly, and the 7-day yield soared to an eye-catching 45,000%. And even Octo, a treasury-listed company tied to WLD, once surged 50x on the back of this rally. For me, it's a reminder of how quickly narratives can shift in crypto when strong hands step in. WLD isn't just moving on speculation, it's showing signs of deep conviction buying, which is something I pay attention to. Interesting. But he's right about it's a reminder of how quickly narratives can shift in the crypto space, which is the point of that message I want to share. It's going down, and then all of a sudden, suddenly a reversal. And even though we're not in the crazy part of this market, this is a fairly large cap coin that essentially doubled in one day. And I think we'll see more of that. And I think we'll see some low market cap coins suddenly get some momentum, and that their price will do much more than double. Now, am I going to be buying this? No, I don't know that for a blue chip. I like their long-term chances. Like, will they do well in this bull run? Yes. I don't know if their idea is going to catch on. It's a narrative that I don't know what the likelihood of that narrative success is going to be. So within blue chips, this is not one that I'd go for. It would just be a wait, especially after a big run like this. I like to buy when things are cheap. It just doubled. It's triple from the lows. Not going to be my kind of buy. So, no, let's go on to MNT.
So MNT, we had looked at a little while ago, and I can see from an old trend line that we drew in here, I was probably bullish here, looking for a breakout, because that's fairly typical of the way I would look at things when they're near these important resistance points. Of course, it does have to get through the resistance point, but even with that failure, that short-term failure, and that's a fairly sizable correction, you know, a good 30% or more. That's the game that we're in, isn't it? The altcoins are extremely volatile. It recovered. When it recovered quickly, you know, the thing turned right around to breaking the high in a blink of a few days. So I think the important thing here is that it's knocking on this resistance point, 1, 2, 3, it's going for the fourth. This still looks like a buy, and I think we're heading towards 2, or it should be having a go at 2, and it's another altcoin that is pointing to a greater rally ahead, which is encouraging. So for me, obviously, if that wasn't clear, I think it's a buy. I think we also got a $1 kind of below 107, or maybe this trend line. I think the trend line is going to be more reasonable now in terms of time as a stop point. Remember, I always need a parachute level out because I'm just looking at price action, not the fundamentals. So I'm not smart enough to do that.
You say that as someone who does significantly well at trading, which is an extremely hard thing to do. All right, a little bit of look at fundamentals of Mantle. Let me share with you what I'm looking at. All right, on coin market cap, we see that their market cap is 4.72 billion. We did look at this one just back when the trend was going up like this, and it was coming right up to this high. And what frequently happens is it comes up here, breaks down, and Paul even said he thought it would probably come back down, and he had some bailout points, but that it was probably a greater signal for a bullish trend, which is now broken up above that whole trend line to the upside. And I would say it's likely to continue. Now, it's on all the major exchanges: Coinbase, MEX, Gate, KuCoin, Bybit. I don't see it on Binance, but it's on plenty of places that people all over the world can get it. What is Mantle? So Mantle is pioneering an on-chain ecosystem dedicated to revolutionizing the future of finance and blockchain scalability, seamlessly bridging traditional finance and decentralized finance through innovative products like Mantle Network, METH, and a bunch of other things. So what makes it unique? Well, its ecosystem is backed by a multi-billion-dollar treasury that features a network of established partners and support. Okay. I wish there's so many buzzwords in there. I would be curious to hear, like, if I were loading up on this one as a blue chip, I would want to be watching interviews of the founders. Now, I think Paul is right. This is off probably to the races. In this bull run, I expect in the coming months it's going to do really well. It bottomed out, not for the whole bear market, but it recently touched down recent lows at 56 cents, and it's now trading over 2x over that. Looks like the bear market lows was at 33 cents. So it's up a little bit from the bear market lows. It's up a little bit from recent lows. Probably some room to run on this, probably to a market cap of, 20 or 40 billion, unless it does something special. Yeah, is this a buy for me? Well, I'm not buying blue chips. Is it a good blue chip? I think it's an okay one. I would be looking for other blue chips that I liked even better. So this one just gets a wait for me. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with it at all. It's just not enough fundamentally right that I'm like, yes, this would be my blue chip bet. I do like the charts though. I mean, the chart on this is bullish. If I like Mantle and I was like looking at the chart, I'd be like, okay, I'd say the odds are quite good that it does well in the coming couple months. All right, let's take a look now at Avalanche. It's been a little bit.
Yeah. This is a great looking chart. I do like this a lot. It's a shame that we didn't see it a day before, just before this breakout, because it was compressing and looking like it was ready to do it. But this has formed a double bottom. It's also very symmetrical, which is what I like to see. But you can see how this is compressed. We've got a crossover the moving averages. All of that's bullish. We've got a sharp breakout through resistance. There's 1, 2, 3 points of resistance at this 27.20 area, and look how it's just gone right through it, and this little tick shows where the price is now. So that's a fairly aggressive or positive indication that it wants to go higher. Now, it doesn't guarantee it's going to keep going higher. There are times when it does this and comes straight back down, and so nothing, as we say in the markets, is 100%, but the probability does look like it wants to move further, and that the dynamics, again, as I said before, have changed. And it's again nice to see a altcoin reacting in this way. We can draw in a reasonable trend rate as well. So below sort of 27.20 or this trend line would be a stop point. But 27.20 in a volatile coin that's moved all the way through it or had this range in one day as a stop, I think it's a bit unreasonable. You've got to give the trade a bit of room to breathe. So having a stop sort of further away, just in case it does come back in the short term, is fair enough, I think. But again, I like the look of this chart. The bigger picture is a bit more equivocal. It is the center of a very big consolidation. And this is the middle part. It's traded below and above and below and above sort of thing. But given where we are in the macro scene, it should be trading, or at least having a go at going towards the upper end of that. Now, whether it does that and then manages to get further and press on in a kind of bullish environment is open to debate, and we'll see if that happens. That might be a bit much to call from this point, but it's definitely enough to get my interest, and for me to say, for me, it would be a buy.
All right, let's jump over to some fundamentals on Avalanche. Market cap solidly in the higher market cap coins, so definitely in the blue chip category. Even now, it's at a $12 billion market cap with a fully diluted value of $20 billion. Where can something like this go? Possibly to the 100 billion range. I think there's some good momentum ahead of this one. Why? Well, I think one of the biggest future video games in the world is Gunzilla, or their off the grid game, which I played significantly. It's definitely at the AAA level. It's possibly good enough to be one of the best shooters in the world. And I think when crypto really gets a focus, I think that game really, really gets massive adoption. Because I think the idea of actually owning your items and being able to participate in the value of that video game doing well, I think is a transformational idea, and most people haven't caught on to it yet. And they put their token on Avalanche, and Avalanche has worked hard to become the blockchain or the blockchain of blockchain gaming. And there's some stiff competition there, but Avalanche has done a pretty good job, and Gunzilla being probably the headliner for that. It looks like the first MiCA compliant gaming token was Gunzilla got EU approved as being compliant with the MiCA ecosystem. That's good news for them. So as for the chart, I think the chart is fairly bullish. I don't know when blockchain gaming is going to run, but when it does, I expect Avalanche is going to do incredibly well. And I think there's still 8x to 10x from here left for Avalanche to go. Now, I'm invested in things that I hope have a much higher return than that. I think Avalanche is a good blue chip. And I know some of my friends, especially that play off the grid, are invested in Avalanche. And it's going to do decent returns, especially compared to what most things do. I'm just more in the riskier things like the Gunzilla token itself. All right, let's so does it get a buy? If I were buying blue chips, I would have some Avalanche. If I were holding a lot of blue chips, I would have some. I do like this chain. I think it's got longevity, and I think in this bull run it does well. All right, next let's take a look at meme coin, PENGU. Everyone knows my feelings on meme coins, but on Wednesdays, as we're just strictly, well, not strictly, but Paul's just covering price analysis. For those that want meme coins looked at, Wednesday is the day.
So these are picks that people have put in the comments from last week, is it? So
that and just other suggestions from some of my private Discord to take a look at.
Sure. So yeah, with Pengus, yeah, you know, we got a meme coin here, and price action has been very bullish, and it still looks like it wants to break up. This resistance is perfectly matched at 4.7 cents. Now, if we look at the previous breakout point, which is here, if it starts to play in, I mean, one could say it's a buy here, or I could buy it here, but it feels like it needs to just do a bit more work to look like it wants to close this loop and have another go at this resistance point. 1, 2 should go on the third. If it doesn't and comes back, then the fourth would be a very strong breakout point. So the trend is still up, and the trend rate, if we draw this line here, you can see it's well above that. Is it trying to print a low that allows us to draw in this line? It's possible. See, we need it to move a bit more to confirm this as a low, because if we did it here, it failed. If we did it here, it failed. If we did it here, it failed. So we need a confirmation of where to draw this line to show that it's accelerating, it's moving at a new trend rate. And it hasn't quite done that yet. So that's why I'm saying the trend is bullish, and I can understand why people would want to be in it. And I could say that the bias is to the upside, but for me to then step in and say, okay, it's going to move into this next leg, I need to be able to draw another trend line, and I want to see it doing something different to these corrections to show it's started its next phase. That having said that, I think it will do that, but me thinking it will do that and seeing evidence that it is doing that are two different things. So I'm going to say it's a wait, but it's really on the edge between a wait and a buy. And if it starts playing, as I say, around, you know, this 4.2 area, I'd be inclined to convert from a wait to a buy at that point. And at the very least, we've got a good stop point, this low that's just printed here. If it goes wrong, that's the parachute level. And longer term, we've still got this upward trend line. But you've got to be a bit more cautious when it comes to meme coins, even though this next phase is probably going to involve a lot of meme coins doing extremely well.
Yeah, I think it does. We're heading into, I think, a market where meme coins hit their narrative again. As long as when things really take off, as retail comes in and they're unfamiliar with what crypto is, they don't usually go for substance first because they don't know how to understand the substance. When you first come into crypto, trying to understand it all is like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. So I see that they often go just towards like just the meme coins because there's not much to understand there. And meme coins are mostly like fads. It's almost like trading fads. And Pudgy Penguins was interesting because they launched an NFT project. Then they rolled that into making some stuffed animals that they got in Walmart. And really, I mean, that was phenomenal what they did. And it's really taken their market cap to some big numbers, at almost a $2.2 billion market cap. I think the chart looks like it wants to break further to the upside. But I just don't do meme coins. If I did, even look, it's already up 10x from the bottoms of the bear market. Would this be one that I hope? I don't know. Like, I think probably they're going to do well this bull market. This could also break to the downside. And so what do I think about the chart? I'd give it a little bit better chance it breaks the upside than the downside. But it's already 10x up. It still could go higher. I think Paul's right. Meme coins are probably going to run soon. Would this be one of my buys? I don't know. I think, yeah, I probably look for a different one if I were to be buying meme coins. This wouldn't be my bet. And funny enough, it'll probably do okay from here even, but there's something else that I would probably be looking for. So for me, it just gets a wait, and I don't like meme coins in general anyway, because it's a different type of analysis. It's almost like a bad analysis or a sentiment analysis that you're looking at rather than a fundamental analysis, because there's not much fundamentals behind it. All right, let's take a look at, speaking of fundamentals, let's take a look at DEVVE.
Yeah, I'm hoping that there's going to be some more fundamental information coming out. On the chart, nothing's really changed since we last looked at it. It's still in a wait position, in this sort of central halfway between the high and the low. But the bias goes to the upside because we're in a macro bull market. There's some evidence of it pushing up in the short term. We've got this little rally up here and it's consolidating along this line. Going below this trend line, not the best thing, but it has recovered quickly. But these are very small moves within this range. We want to see some evidence of a breakout of this range. Ideally, a break of this downward trend line. Perhaps it's just waiting, it's just going to consolidate sideways until it hits it. And then that's where it breaks out. I mean, I'm not really sure, but overall, it's, I'd say the macro environment is bullish, so that should support it. But technically, it's just riding this trend line, and the probability is with the upside. But I want to see a bit more evidence, so it has to be a wait at this point. Now, if it gets over this 52-cent area, this line here, which this support, which becomes resistance, that's the most obvious resistance point that would kind of change the dynamics, apart from the trend line, of course. The trend line and the 200-day, is that the 200-day? Yeah, that is the 200-day moving average, are right at the same point here. So we'll see whether it's going to, have a go at this line in the next week or two. But as I say, I think there's going to be a jump in risk on. We'll just have to see if that responds to it. Let's hope it does. So for me, it's a wait, but I would be on the lookout for a move from tomorrow.
Yeah, this was probably one you'd be watching closely to see, because for what Paul looks at, it's not a clear sign that it's ready to turn around yet. I don't mind buying in this phase at all, but I look at very different things than Paul. So I'm looking for companies that I believe that are undervalued. And there's always reasons why I feel like they're undervalued. Now, I'm highly biased towards DEVVE. I hold a lot of DEVVE myself. And I believe that they're massively undervalued. It's the fastest blockchain in crypto that I'm aware of at 8 million transactions per second. There's some very cool things about it in that they didn't use a difficult programming language. They used a programming language that 90% of web programmers already know and understand, with just API calls to interface with their blockchain. So that kind of speeds with an interface that most every programmer can use means that it could garnish significant development and have a significant future. But they haven't gotten major awareness yet. So there's a huge awareness gap. I mean, if you look at their market cap is quite low. Let me pull it up. I think is so they're at a $40 million market cap for a layer one blockchain that has a kind of speed. This is a market cap that could easily, at this point in the market, be at a $4 billion market cap if it got massive awareness. So that alone is where the undervaluedness comes from, is that it hasn't gotten traction that most people are aware of it. And that's just where they could be now. In the greater bull market, they could go 10x, 20x, 30x higher than that. And so will it come into mass awareness? That is the question that, I don't have a magic crystal ball to know the future. That's the bet I'm taking. And that's where the risk is. I do like the overall chart. See, I like to buy in these kinds of zones, even though it's not clear when it's going to turn around. This is juicy accumulation zones where I try to accumulate on tokens that I like, and then I'm just waiting. And there's significant potential upside, even if it just comes up these other highs at $1.80 something. And then if it breaks up, it was once at like 230, but then as it shoots off to the moon, which I hope it does, I hope it goes into the 30, 40, 50, $100 range. And it's right now trading at about 46 cents. So significant potential upside at these prices. I rated a buy. It's an amazingly low price. I don't think it stays in these for forever. Now, I was calling it a massive buy on this downward trend, and we actually did a video right as it was about 14 cents. And I was like, it's criminally undervalued because just there's prices pushing it down. And I had a good friend call me that he's a young guy, and he was looking at going to school and trying to figure out what he was going to do. And he asked me what I would do if I were in his shoes. And I said I would get 2 or 3 jobs. I would drop out of school and I'd put everything into crypto. And so he decided to buy DEVVE at that point because I just covered it and he liked what I'd said, and he bought it right at about 14 cents. And so as it went crazy, he was like, oh my gosh, he started to get an idea of what crypto can do. And I think he's going to see a lot more upside than what he's seeing now. It went crazy and it's pulled back, though, because he bought so low, he's still significantly up. But I don't think he's seen anything yet. And crypto, when done right, crypto investment, when done right, can lead to the crazy kind of gains, the kind of wealth that, well, I don't know that there's anything else that's performed quite like crypto. It can be astounding if you're doing things right. If you're doing things wrong, and most people do, most people come in, they buy high, and then they sell low. And that ends poorly every single time. But if you're using analysis, whether you're a price trader like Paul, where he's taking things where the odds are stacked more for him than against him, and he has his bailout zones, that can lead to really good gains. Or I take the longer approach. I trade over the greater 4-year bull cycle where I'm buying near the bottom and I'm selling near the top. And that's worked out really well for me. Okay, well, let's jump into first our super chat. So Canone is now E is probably for your first name. I appreciate the super chat. He clarified here, last name is pronounced Canone, and it's Italian. Makes sense. Let's take a look at PRCL. We've got you on mute.
Yeah. Sorry, that's probably Canone. I would guess, if it's Italian. But yeah, cool. So what have we got here? We have got a downward trend that's been fairly aggressive, and it was compressing. So you see how these highs were getting lower and the lows were getting higher. So it means the market was getting ready for some move, some potentially big move. Now, this can usually mean that the trend is going to continue. In Elliott wave terms, they look for reversals in triangles. So it kind of depends, really. I think you just got to wait for evidence and then learn to look at the macro positions to what's more likely. So I would have said if this was the other way around, if it was like in an upward trend, there would be more bias for it to break out upwards because everything is bullish, or most things are more bullish. So sometimes the chart setup is not clear, but you are waiting for some signal that tells you that it has become clear or clearer. I mean, it's never 100% clear. There's always some doubt, of course, but this resistance point clearly has been taken out. That's a good sign. We look at where it traded to and where it's come back to on a one-day basis. And this is a very big move, and it's corrected back. So if we were to go into a, like a 10-minute chart, you can see how, it's not done. Why is it not showing out on a 10-minute chart? Let's try a 30-minute chart. Actually, that looks even more bullish on a 30-minute chart. How can that be? That's really strange. What I was looking for is this pullback. Unless it didn't really trade there, perhaps it didn't. I don't know, but there's something not quite right with the data. But it's corrected quite a lot, and that can happen on a day basis where there's a bit of profit taking. I want to see where this closes. And if it closes anywhere around this area here from sort of 12 cents upwards, then that's positive. I mean, it's positive anyway that it's broken this resistance line. And I think it should indicate that this is more of a base than what would be described technically as a continuation pattern. So with that in mind, we should see a test of this 14 cents point over the next couple of weeks, potential for a break of that and a move beyond. So that's the sort of thing I'd be looking for. Now, I'd know pretty quickly if I'm wrong, because by Friday it'll be back in this range here, and that would look like a big false, breakout. So risk reward for me is pretty good. I would look to buy it, and I would have a stop somewhere below, the tight stop below this line, maybe below the moving averages, which look like they're going to cross, which is another positive thing. But this little build up, you can see this bang, bang, and then the breakout. That line there at 8 cents. I mean, I know it's percentage, such big moves, but technically that was the jumping off point. So if I look for a place to hide a stop, I'd want to hide it below that. So we'll see where it closes. This is indicating that this trend, or this base, or this whole area here is a base rather than a continuation of the trend, which is a good sign. So let's see how it trades. But I think there's enough there to suggest that it's starting something. And with that in mind, for me, I would put a buy strategy around it, and it would be to buy it sort of when it closes, or if it shows strength over this level here, and I'd be looking to put a stop somewhere down here.
Yeah, interesting. I was doing some analysis to see if I could figure out why it's broken to the upside, and I haven't yet placed it. Here's where we're at. Their market cap is still pretty low at $44 million market cap, fully diluted value 107 million. So it just went from about a 20 something, 25, $28 million market cap to a 44 million market cap. So it's still a fairly low cap one, but it is tradable on Coinbase, which means a lot of liquidity can come in fairly fast. Bybit is another major exchange these days. MEXC, Gate.io, KuCoin, so it's easily tradable. Now, it almost reminds me, I'm trying to figure out like the fundamentals of it. It seems like a real estate investment trust in some ways. So if you go to their Twitter, they have lots of cute things that's like, did you know Parcel has two sides? The investment platform, real estate exposure with just $100. And then Parcel Labs, the data engine powering it all. Every chart, every data point, every insight, Parcel comes straight from the labs. Just watched the Apple event. Pretty cool. They shouted us out. So maybe that's what's caused the recent pump.
Right.
Is that the guy with a nationwide real estate portfolio all managed from his phone? Has two girls, and it says, become the person worth a double take. That's funny and catchy, right? So it seems like they give you the ability. I was checking out their website, available real estate deals, and it says Austin, Texas, $302 a square foot, Chicago, Illinois, $270 a square foot, Brooklyn, New York, $705 a square foot. I don't know if this is like I don't really understand what it is you can actually do with everything.
Is this tokenization? I mean, no, they can't be actually selling land, can they?
Or most likely it would be real estate that's then rented out, because probably wouldn't be land. It would probably be buildings, houses, etc. But the likelihood that they fall into a security if they're tokenizing assets like that is almost guaranteed. And so I'm curious to know more about this. Most of the real estate stuff that I've seen come out is like, we tokenize real estate. Those projects all fail because it's not like they do well for a while until they just flitter away because they can't get enough traction to get it through regulatory approval, which is really what they would need. The big players are going to be the ones that tokenize your asset. So it's going to be XRP. It's going to be really, really big players, not XYZ small market cap coin with the, $10 million market cap that's going to be tokenizing those assets unless they partnered with the big players. So this is a curious one. I'd be curious to know what you know about it.
There's something actually on the website. If you flip over to my screen just quickly, it says on their website, if this is the right, I think it is because it looks like the site you were looking at. It says, what am I investing in? You're investing in deals that track the average price of real estate in a specific city or neighborhood. When prices rise, your deal gains value. So you don't physically own property. You're investing in market growth without the burden of property management. So it's almost like an ETF or in sort of specific property that's kind of linked to a token, which reminds me a little bit of what we call spread betting, which is something that's big in the UK, not big elsewhere, where you're not actually buying the underlying stock or index or product. You're kind of betting that it will go higher or betting that it will go lower in the same way that you bet on a horse race. It seems similar to that, perhaps not exactly the same. I mean, I'm just looking at this superficially. So
I think you nailed it, that you're not underlying any assets. You can just make money based on it going a certain way. So some people take the short position, some people take the long position. And so you're just basically making bets on which way certain neighborhoods and markets will go. So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. So it says it's not fractional ownership, market exposure to real estate, buy and sell deals in minutes, not months. So just for my own understanding, what was the shout? Was there a shout out by Apple for them?
Yeah.
And so what are Apple saying this for? How's Apple going to get involved with something like this?
It's often really a paid shout out, right? Just watch the Apple event. Pretty cool. They shouted us out.
Right. I'll have to. I mean, I watched some of that. I didn't hear them say anything about Parcel, but I didn't watch it all, to be fair. So I must have missed it. But if they did shout them out, that's pretty big. But doesn't make sense. Apple are a technology company. This is kind of a speculative link to real estate company. Not sure why Apple would be shouting them out, unless they, like you say, it was sponsored. But why would they sponsor?
I don't know. Good question. All right. A lot not known there. It is a fairly low market cap project too, to get a shout out. Like it seems like probably some kind of paid gig, because otherwise, why would Apple? Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns there. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go on to our next one, which would be
it's Atlas.
Atlas and POLIS.
Yeah. Take a look at Atlas, and if we have time, mainly the ratio between them, assuming one is bullish, how would you roll between them as one does better? Okay, so just looking at the whole question, it's saying which one is, we're looking at both charts, which chart looks more bullish, but the ratio between them, and kind of trading between one or the other? I mean, look, that's a difficult question to answer because it just depends on how the spread between the two play out. So it's funnily enough, it's exactly what I was talking about at the top of the show about the synthetic product of buying one and selling the other and the ratios between the two. Now, if I look at Atlas, what we got a downward trend. For me, this is definitely a weight, but there's some activity going on there. So we got a higher low and it's spiked down and it's bouncing up a little bit. It's minute, it's really small, but there's potentially something that might indicate a breakout. Not enough for me to want to trade it, but there's something there. Now, if we look at POLIS by comparison, it's very similar, but it's had a run and it's corrected and it's in a kind of stronger position. I mean, this was a much bigger run than Atlas. So to be honest, I don't know anything about them. I'm not sure how they're connected or why one would want to play one against the other. You know, so perhaps that's something that Rain knows about, or we can get clarified. But just looking at the charts themselves independently, I would say that Polis is looking like a stronger chart for me. And if I had to choose between one or the other, I would, at the moment, choose this one. I mean, there's still, would I buy this compared to some of the others? No. But if I had to buy one against the other, it would be this at this point. This is the trend line. So I'd be looking for it to weaken to show me that I'm wrong. Otherwise, I'd hold a position. We can look at like Atlas US dollar, and then we can put divided by Polis US dollar, and then have a look at how that trades. And at the moment, it's difficult to call how you would trade this sort of price action. Maybe this is going to press down towards this area here, you know, in the short term, but then there's support and it might go back up again. But it's not that clear cut. It's be very hard to trade between the two, especially when you get this sort of volatility. That's what I'm more concerned about, because that's kind of come out of the blue and it seems very aggressive when it does move. So you could be offside by quite a lot. So my strategy, if I was going to trade one or the other, I might trade long both of them, but have more of one than the other. I wouldn't necessarily want to go short of one against the other, just because it feels like the potential for very sharp moves is too great, and maybe there's not a lot of volume in there, and that means I could get caught out. So I'd prefer to take a sort of a stance on whether I think that one or the other or both are going up, and then if anything, like say trading gold and silver, you might have money in both and you might take profit in one and you might put a little bit in the other, which is perhaps what you're asking. That could be a strategy. But when I think of spreads between two products, I think of going long one and short the other, which I'm not sure is a particularly good idea for me, just because of the volatility.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what is the difference between the two as far as the tokens in their use case. So I think POLIS is their governance token, and I don't know what Atlas does. But I was catching up.
Is it a game or?
Yeah, it's a video game, and I'll show some details on it. So they launched with a dual token, and some gaming projects did that back then. It's become less popular to do, but back in 2021, a number of games launched that way, and it just allows them to raise more money, and they gave different use cases for the different tokens. I think as the governance token, I would lean more towards POLIS. I do like the chart of POLIS in that I think it's turning around like this. Perhaps Atlas has bottomed and they should run somewhat together, but one is going to outperform the other one. And I don't know which of the two it is. That's what I'd be trying to take a bet on. And I think there's something, I don't remember if both of them don't really have. Notice the max supply is not filled in. There's a total supply, a circulating supply, but no max supply. Notice that the circulating supply and the total supply are much closer on POLIS than they are on Atlas, which shows here of circulating supply of 20.68 billion with a total supply of 36 billion Atlas. So a lot less in circulation on the Atlas token. So a fully diluted value of $32 million market cap versus the POLIS as a fully diluted value of 27 million. What I want to know, first of all, to know if I'm interested in either of those is the game going to survive? Well, I've heard by some friends that are heavy in blockchain gaming that they're liking what Star Atlas is doing. So I was just checking out, well, what is it that they're doing? And it looks like they've developed a first-person shooter space-type environment game. It looks like they're playing on a planet with gravity and a futuristic thing. And this almost looks like way back when, like similar to what Halo was. I don't remember if it's Halo 4 or something, but it's got, instead of jetpacks, it's jets under your feet. And the movement looks really, really good. Looks like the combat is good. This is probably good enough to do quite well during the bull market. Now it's supposed to be like ships and, ship fighting and everything too. What they're trying to do is probably give their audience something to play in the meantime while they continue to build out the game development, because amazing games take years and years and years to develop. And they've been working on this since I think 2020. Maybe it wasn't until 2021. So they're 4, maybe 5 years in development of their overall game, and probably with their space-based game, there's a lot more to develop. So they probably have given their viewers some kind of combat, something to hold on to for this bull market, for it to possibly grow. Looks pretty good just based on the split. The combat looks good. They're really good at little promotions. Breaking Star Atlas introduced Starframe, an open source developer tool framework for the Solana ecosystem, enabling more complex program development while reducing compute costs. Interesting. I hope Star Atlas becomes the space game of the future. I love space games. So, goodness, I like where the price is at. I like what's going on. I like where the price is at on both of them. So I probably like POLIS, the governance token, a little bit more, just like Paul said. So this one's POLIS here, Star Atlas DAO, the POLIS token, but low of like 47 cents up to 77 cents. And I wouldn't mind buying before it looked like it had turned around, but the market cap's 23 million on this. Their Atlas market cap is 18 million, but this has a higher, it's going to continue to have more tokens coming into circulation than probably POLIS will. So even though the market cap here seems a little bit cheaper, I think there'll be continued dilution here. But both of them, I think, are a pretty good buy. I would rate both of them a buy. Especially seeing after what their gameplay looks like. And maybe I'll take some time in the coming weeks to just see what I think of the game. All right. People ask me what I do, and some of what I do is I play video games to test out these video games. I did try streaming them, Paul. I'm just not a video game streamer. It's just not my thing. It looks and feels way too much like work. Man, when I want to play a game, I want to just be experiencing the game and figuring out, like, is this a game that's going to catch on? is my investment in this game well placed? And so when I'm playing, I'm trying to immerse myself in the feeling of the game and the community, trying to get to know some people in there. And it's just hard to do while streaming. So streaming the games wasn't really my thing.
Yeah, incidentally, just while you were giving your analysis, I had a look at I had a quick look at I did a search about Parcel and AI. I just did an AI search, from Google, and said, did they get shouted out at the Apple event? And they said no. So that looks it's not a very good thing. We'd have to find out why they said that, because that's looking a little bit spammy in my view, which kind of undermines the whole thing for me a little bit. The credibility goes down if they're going to say something like that if it's not correct.
It makes it, the way they word it, it makes it seem like Apple shouted them out directly.
Yeah.
And if they just shouted out the ecosystem, which is far more likely, they should have specified. So that they're not overstating it.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed unlikely, but not impossible, but unlikely. But yeah, and again, this is just an AI search, and AI can sometimes be wrong. So I don't know. It needs a bit more research, but quite, it didn't really jive with why the tech company would be doing that. But anyway, you get the point. I think you just got to be really careful.
Awesome. I'm in spot and POLIS won the option of taking profits into Atlas as they both rise. Thank you. Ship Dev has live combat and integration is slated for end of the year. Probably the integration from the first person shooter to the ship type of stuff. Looks like they made significant progress. I'm pleased with what I'm seeing on the gaming side, and I'm also pleased to be seeing the gaming coming together like that. And yet the price is so cheap because blockchain gaming is way outside the narrative right now, and it will come back into the narrative, and it will hit really, really big. And some of the lead blockchain games, their tokens are going to go crazy in that environment. So great time to bring up Atlas and POLIS. Appreciate it. Now, if you want somebody who does stream, if you haven't watched Freelander's channel, he does cover it. And if you want to shout out what they can search on YouTube to easily find your channel, Freelander, by all means. He does cover actual gameplay, and so that you can see if you don't want to play the games, but you want to invest in them, or you want to play the games and kind of learn what it's about so that you can figure it out faster. His channel is a great one to watch. Big A, one of my friends that I haven't played off the grid very much in a bit, but one of my good friends that I play with, we have a lot of fun. We have some other friends that we play with that aren't really crypto people, but Big A has talked them into getting some crypto. So now they have some exposure. Now,
I wonder if someone could invent a Dungeons and Dragons type crypto game. I think that might have some legs, because it doesn't really require speed, but there's many people who play it. I mean, I don't, but I know.
Like
I know
put it on the blockchain. Yeah. I bet you that would be huge because it's a dice-based game. And you can easily put something like that so that people can have the game experience with assets, with their friends all over the world without having to be in the same physical location.
Yeah. That would make sense.
Yeah, it would. Now, did I miss any of the other ones that KASPA? And we'll take a look at GUNZ token, which is awesome.
Sure. We'll have a quick look at those because we're running into nearly an hour and a half. So yeah. So I mean, I can say very quickly with KASPA, basically the chart is a bit neutral here because obviously we got this lovely upward trend, and then this is the topping phase. How much of a top is open to a question here, because it's made a consolidation and corrected, and it's corrected close to the prior support, which is a good place for it to have stopped. And now it's moving into a triangle. Now, triangles are usually continuation patterns. So the downward trend here would mean it would continue here, but we're in a different environment. As I was saying with the other chart, we need to wait for a breakout to confirm it. So that's why this whole area here is neutral. And see if this prints a low, could print another high and then break this resistance, and then it'll be back up again, which I would say 60-40 is what's going to happen. But while we're here, it's still open to interpretation. So it's a wait, but I put more kind of, I give some more probability to the upside just because of the macro environment, and also because the bigger picture trend is bullish. So that's where we are there, but good one to look at, especially while it's consolidating. We should come back to it, in a few weeks, just to see where it is.
Now, KASPA is one that did incredibly well during the bear market, and it wasn't on my radar in the early days. So this isn't one that I participate in, though I know some of the Rainmaker family in our Discord, they did buy in the early days and did incredibly well during the bear market on this. But what goes up does come down, and this is a perfect example. Now, will it then flip around and go the other direction in the bull market? Possibly. So if we take it off log scale, it's come down from its high of 20 cents down to 8.2, and maybe it's ready to go the other way. But this has experienced a lot of its gains. It's already now in the large cap coins. Like, how much further could this do from here? If you got in early, you're still way up. I like to roll. This is why I roll when things get way ahead, and because what does go up does come down, and so I can't buy KASPA at this point personally. I'd be buying other things. It's just experienced so much of its gains from the bear market. I would need to be convinced on why it could go to much higher numbers, like an $80 billion market cap, as for me to buy this one. And I just don't have the data to know if that's really even possible with it. So for me, it would be a sell. I would have sold it as it was going crazy during the bear market, rolled it into a bunch of stuff that's cheap. Still be a sell for me. Not that I don't believe in the project. I just don't like where the price is at after having gone so far up. And it's only corrected down by really half from where it was at the top. So that's not a huge correction to the downside. But yeah, what goes up does come down. All right, let's take a look at Gunzilla.
Yeah, so this hasn't got a lot of data, which increases the caution level by quite a considerable number. I'm not sure if this is real price action here, this spike down, or whether it's a bad chart print, just a bad data point. So what can we say about this? You've got to be very careful, that's for sure. The trend has been down, and I'm guessing that the interest has come because it's had this sudden spike up, which, similarly to the parcel chart, we need to see where it closes, because although it traded up here, see, it's come all the way back to this point, which is why are people selling it into this move so aggressively. If it wanted to move again, we would see the close more up at this point, which has got time to do. But that would be my question. Now, on the other side of that, we have got like a match support point to almost to the pip, or pretty much to the pip, at 2 cents. So if one was to take a trade here, where the stop would be. It'd have to be below here. So we know our risk reward. Is there enough in the price action to do it? Not in a confident amount of money. Maybe coffee money just to see, and then if it extends, put a bit more in, just to confirm it. But there's just not enough. There's just not a lot of data, unless it's in some area that, like if it's a game, and as Jay was saying, and you play the game, you think, oh, you've got some experience with this, and you think this is going to be a really big hit, and you feel something fundamentally might push it higher. I know I'm always saying everything's technical, but when something's so new like this, there isn't enough volume in there to get the kind of mass market one mind read on what's going on. So it could easily be pushed around. And this does apply to a lot of smaller coins as well. If you get one guy who just decides to sell because he wants to buy a house or something, it might not even be that the project's bad. They could just be taking money out for whatever reason. It can really affect the chart, but actually fundamentally it might be doing okay, and then it'll recover, and you'll see that recovery. But that sort of volatility shows up on the chart, especially in the early days when the volumes are low. So I see why you want to look at it. It's a very nice move here, and it would be good if it can close in a higher area. But I'd like to see a bit more price action, and I hope you can understand why I'd be a bit more cautious, given that there's not a lot of data there. But definitely one that we should keep an eye on, because I wouldn't want to see it sort of up here without having, this is the level where it becomes really interesting. Let me just draw that line. Why is it not drawing here? Let me just pop it in there. So this line here, support, broke through cleanly, and then comes back up, hits it as resistance, comes back down again. So if it gets close to this level, for me, it becomes more interesting, because a break of that puts it more into the blue sky area. And that's where I think a chance of a trend increases. So we could come back to it and see if that's happening, if it's moving in the right direction, or whether this is just a flash in the pan move, which is difficult to tell at this point.
Yeah. Now, interesting. There's something about to happen. Now, I like Gunzilla. I think off the grid is going to be one of the big winners of blockchain gaming in this coming bull run. And his token is really interesting, but one of the reasons I look at fundamentals is to help me avoid pitfalls that you wouldn't otherwise see. And so here we are in September, it's about to be October, and realize that the circulating supply is going to jump from 1.12 billion gun tokens to 1.71. So it's going to have a 50% increase. And then it's going to have slow increases from there for the next, 6 months. But it is going to have this big jump, and this big jump is due to come early October. So with that said, there's going to be a big supply shock coming up, and that 50% more tokens are going to be out there. So I don't think we've hit our lows on this. Now, this has to do with the big announcement, I think, with MICA in the EU approving the gun token. So that's probably what's driving this. I think it'll crack back down. I think the price, when those tokens kind of dump, is some pre-sale investors, they just dump their tokens. Might drive it to the lows that are probably going to be the bear market lows. So watch for Gunzilla in another 2 weeks. Actually, no, it's going to be 3 weeks to a month. So it would definitely be a wait for me, but watch for it then, because I think it's going to go below this level, and we'll see our bear market lows for Gunzilla then. Paul, thank you for joining us. It's been fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the picks, and see you on the other side. See you next week.
All right. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Well, you're in the right place, and you're here at a really, really good time. A lot of the bull market action has not happened yet. And as you're looking at some of these smaller coins, you see that many of their tokens, especially in blockchain gaming, are at really close to bear market lows. I think that's an amazing opportunity. I don't like all of them. I try to share with you my thoughts, why I like things, just so you can just get a glimpse into my analysis. At the end of the day, what I hope you're learning is to become a savage investor yourself, that you're learning how to make, how to analyze deals and see if it fits for what you like. Because if you can learn the skill of being able to analyze the pros and cons of things and learning to take a lot more bets that you win rather than you lose, and when you do win, the numbers go up considerably versus when you lose what you lose, then you can do incredibly well. Like looking back to the bear market of 2018 through 2020, which was my first bear market, I was fairly new at crypto, and I realized that we were onto something big. And I did buy riskier projects. In fact, many of them were riskier than even what I do today. They were in market caps that were in the hundreds of thousands, and I didn't know how to look at longevity yet. And 2/3 of what I bought failed. So you would think, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Over half of what I bought failed. But because we were in the crypto space and the risk appetite that I was looking at, when the projects that did succeeded, those gains far exceeded everything that I'd lost. So from the bottom to the top, my portfolio went 100x, and that's even with 2/3 of the projects failing. Now I've refined my strategy, and I like things that aren't as risky. Like during that, I invested in some meme coins. Some of the projects I invested in had unknown founders, like the team was anonymous. And for the most part, I don't invest in anonymous teams anymore. And I've just refined things for what I've invested in this bear market. We're yet to see how this bull market turns out. But I think those days of seeing what comes of it is about to happen. And there's still some really good deals that are really cheap. I think blockchain gaming is off everybody's radar, and the prices are really cheap. It's exactly the right time to be looking at blockchain gaming and what projects have a chance to go crazy. Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy our little wrap here at the end. You know what this is all about. See you soon.
To the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you buy before you could. It was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. Principles are simple, to leave in a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling the parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be predators. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. They go with the hate, say the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.